My name is Marcia. The snow was falling gently outside the cabin as I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me. The screen showed the encrypted draft, 3 PDFs attached, with the subject line Trustee Notice, Section 9, the Thompson Family Trust. Just seconds ago, I had pressed the send button, and now, in a matter of minutes, everything would change for the people who had so carelessly hurt my daughter, Emily. I cast my mind back to that fateful rehearsal dinner at the luxurious Grand Regency Hotel, just a few days prior. It was meant to be a joyous occasion, a celebration of my younger sister, Megan's upcoming marriage to Brian. Yet, it turned into a nightmare. There were about 50 guests gathered in the opulent ballroom, the air filled with expectancy and excitement. Megan, dressed in a stunning silver cocktail dress, raised her champagne glass. With a feigned sweetness, she began, "Let's be honest, Emily has always been the black sheep in this family. We've carried the burden of her illegitimacy for 17 years. Tonight, I refuse to let it taint my marriage." Suddenly, silence fell over the room. My mother, Sarah, stood up and clapped approvingly. My father, Robert, raised his glass in a silent toast. The rest of the guests murmured in agreement, as if they had all rehearsed this cruel script together. I looked at Emily. Her face was pale, but her eyes were filled with a quiet strength. I reached out and took her hand. "We won't be attending," I said, my voice steady. Without another word, we walked out of the ballroom, leaving the stunned silence behind us. As we drove away from the hotel, the soft patter of rain on the windshield was the only sound in the car. Emily finally broke the silence. "Mom, when you said 72 hours to Megan, what did you mean?" I took a deep breath. "Not yet, honey. Just trust me." She nodded, her eyes looking out at the blur of city lights. It all started much earlier, a few weeks before the wedding. I received an email from the wedding planner, Lisa. The subject line read, Thompson Harris Wedding, December 10th, 2025. Guest list adjustment. The message stated simply, per the bride's wishes, the ceremony will be adult only. We kindly request that Emily, age 17, not attend. Your understanding is appreciated. 2 months earlier, Megan had called Emily personally and asked her to read a passage from the Bible during the ceremony. She had said, "I can't imagine this wedding without you up there, sweetie." Emily had spent a week practicing the passage at our kitchen table and had even bought a beautiful burgundy dress from a boutique for $120. I wrote back to Lisa, stating that Emily was personally invited by the bride and asking her to confirm directly with Megan. 4 days later, Lisa's reply arrived. After consulting with the bride and the groom's family, we confirm that Emily will not be attending. We trust you'll respect the bride's wishes. That evening, I sat Emily down and told her about the change. "Did I do something wrong, Mom?" she asked, setting down her pencil carefully. "No, sweetie. Some grown-ups are making bad choices. It's not your fault," I reassured her. The next morning, Emily came downstairs in her burgundy dress. She stood in front of the hallway mirror. "Is it too dark for a wedding rehearsal?" she asked. "It's perfect," I said, and went upstairs to get the pearl earrings I had given her on her 13th birthday. I had told her they were from her father's mother, a story that was closer to a family secret. We drove to the city on the Friday afternoon before the wedding. As we pulled up to the valet stand at the Grand Regency, I saw Brian's mother, Victoria, striding across the lobby in a mink coat. She gave Emily a long, cold look before walking past us without a word. In the corner, she leaned towards my mother and whispered something. My mother nodded, that familiar, grave nod that she always had when she had already made up her mind. Inside the ballroom, the centerpieces were elegant white orchids, arranged by Megan to symbolize purity. Megan and Brian sat at the head table with his parents. My mother, father, my Aunt Rose, Emily, and I were seated at the second table. When we sat down, my mother glanced at Emily's earrings, and for a brief moment, a strange look crossed her face. My father avoided Emily's eyes just as a man avoids the reminder of a painful mistake. At 7:30, Megan tapped her champagne flute with a fork. The room fell silent. She rose, smiling that practiced smile that had made her a successful marketing executive at 30. Brian and I want to share a moment of honesty with all of you tonight. Brian's family has always believed that truth is the foundation of a good marriage, and I want to uphold that tonight, she said. Brian's mother smiled and nodded. Brian placed his hand on Megan's lower back, oblivious to what was about to happen. Under the table, I squeezed Emily's knee gently. Megan then lifted her glass and said, "Let's be honest, Emily has been a stain on this family for 17 years. I won't let her shadow follow me into my marriage." In the stunned silence that followed, my mother stood up and clapped slowly, 4 times. Each clap was deliberate, a show of her support for Megan's cruelty. My father raised his glass in a silent toast. The room filled with a low murmur of agreement, a sickening sound that made my blood boil. Brian was the only one who seemed to hesitate. His hand fell from Megan's back, and he stared down at his plate. I stood up, took Emily's hand, and said, "We're leaving." As we walked past Megan's chair, she hissed under her breath, "I knew you'd make this about yourself." I stopped for a moment and said, "You'll regret this." In the lobby, the wedding planner, Lisa, approached me. "Mrs. Thompson, I tried to stop it," she said. I raised my hand. "It's too late for apologies," I replied. As we drove away from the city, Emily was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "Mom, was my dad a bad person? Is that why they hate me?" I took a deep breath before answering. "Your dad was a wonderful man. He died before he ever got to meet you. He loved books and the ocean. He would have adored you." She was quiet again, and then she said, "Then why do they act like he never existed?" I reached over and took her hand. "Because some people are afraid of things they can't control, sweetie. Your existence is a reminder of a choice they made a long time ago. But it's not your fault." When we got home, I sat in the kitchen, thinking about everything. I remembered the day when Emily was just a baby. It was 2008, and I was working as an interior designer. One night, my mother called me in a panic. "Marcia, I need you to come home. Megan is in big trouble. Don't tell anyone." I drove to my parents' house in the suburbs. Megan was sitting on the couch, crying, her knees pulled up to her chest. She was 16 years old and 3 months pregnant. The father was a 29-year-old man named David, who had been a guest at one of my mother's friends' summer parties. He was married and had no idea about the pregnancy. My mother had a plan. She said Megan would go to a boarding school in Europe for a year, and the baby would be given up for adoption. But my grandfather, Henry, had other ideas. He called us all to his lake house in February. "The child stays in this family," he said firmly. "Marcia, you'll take her." I was shocked. "Grandpa, this is crazy." "I have a career," I protested. He looked at me with those wise eyes. "You're the strongest one here. You'll raise her right, and I'll protect you legally. Megan can go back to her life as if nothing happened." He spoke to me for an hour, laying out a plan. A family trust would be established, and the baby, who he named Emily, would never be told the truth. He said, "Some lies are necessary to protect the ones we love, but every lie has a price. I want to make sure you have a way to pay it when the time comes." Emily was born at the lake house in April. A private nurse was there to assist. My father was on a business trip, and I arrived a few hours later. When I walked into the room and saw the tiny baby in a white blanket, I felt a love like I had never known before. Megan had turned her face to the wall and refused to look at the baby. 6 weeks later, I drove Emily home to my apartment in the city. Grandpa had filled the car with baby essentials and an envelope of cash, with a note that said, "For emergencies." Over the years, Megan had been cold to Emily. At Christmas when Emily was 6, Megan had made a snide comment about a toy Emily was playing with. "You'll just break it," she said. Grandpa had stepped in and told Megan to apologize, but she had stormed out of the room. In 2018, 10 years after Emily was born, and 2 years before he died, Grandpa called me to his lawyer's office. The lawyer, Miss Jenkins, spread out the documents on her desk. "This is the Henry Thompson Trust, effective today. Total corpus, $10 million. Real property, the lake house on Lakeview Lake valued at $3 million, and cash and securities worth $7 million. You, Marcia, are the trustee with full discretion." I was confused. "Why me?" I asked. "Ms. Jenkins replied, "Because you're the only one who has been honest about Emily's situation. And the clause I'm about to show you will only work if the trustee is someone the family doesn't suspect." She turned to a section of the trust document. "Each beneficiary, your father, mother, Megan, and yourself, is required to execute an annual affirmation by December 31st each year. The affirmation confirms no material misrepresentation regarding the lineage, parentage, or legitimacy of any descendant of the grantor. Any beneficiary found to have made such a misrepresentation can have all past and future distributions suspended, redirected, or permanently revoked." I realized then that Grandpa had been preparing for this moment for a long time. He had given me the power to protect Emily. He slid a sealed envelope across the desk. "Open this if you ever decide to expose the truth." I took it home and put it in a safety deposit box. Fast forward to mid-November, 4 weeks after the rehearsal dinner. I decided to clean the attic. Emily helped me, and in one of the old crates, we found a vintage baby monitor. There was a cassette in the receiver slot, labeled 048 in Grandpa's handwriting. That night, after Emily went to bed, I played the cassette in the basement. The first few minutes were the soft sounds of a baby breathing. Then I heard my mother's voice and Grandpa's. "She'll grow up not knowing. It's the best for everyone. Megan can't handle the shame. Marcia is strong. She can take it," my mother pleaded. Grandpa replied, "And what if Megan resents Marcia in the future?" My mother said, "She'll forget. Children forget." I realized then that Grandpa had been recording that conversation, not to monitor the baby, but to have evidence in case the truth ever came back to hurt Emily. I emailed Ms. Jenkins and told her about the cassette. We met the following week. She played the cassette and then showed me the pre-drafted notice of material misrepresentation. She assured me that Megan would understand the implications as soon as she saw the words material misrepresentation about Lineage. We decided to make the notice effective on Christmas night, at 12:01 a.m. I wanted it to be my decision, my way of standing up for Emily. Ms. Jenkins prepared the necessary documents and gave me a USB drive with the signed PDFs and a note that said, "Press send when you're ready. Call me 90 seconds after." A few days before Christmas, my mother called me. "Marcia, let's have a family Christmas at the lake house. Let's heal old wounds. Of course, Emily is welcome." I agreed, knowing that this would be the moment of reckoning. On Christmas Eve, we arrived at the lake house. The porch light was off, but I turned it on. Megan and Brian arrived later. Dinner was an awkward affair, with Megan trying to make small talk with Emily, but Emily responding in short, polite sentences. After dessert, Emily went upstairs. Brian pulled me aside in the kitchen. "At the rehearsal, you said something about 72 hours. What did you mean?" he asked. I looked at him. "You'll know the truth soon. I'm sorry it has to be this way." He nodded, a look of understanding in his eyes. That night, at around 2 a.m., I walked past Emily's room and saw that the door was slightly ajar. Megan was sitting in the rocking chair beside Emily's bed, crying silently. She whispered, "I'm so sorry," over and over again. I stood there for a moment and then walked away, knowing that she was beginning to realize the consequences of her actions. On Christmas morning, Aunt Rose arrived with a batch of homemade cookies. Emily smiled for the first time that trip. When we exchanged gifts, I gave Emily the pearl earrings again. My mother saw them and her face turned pale. She knew those earrings were a part of the secret. At dinner, Emily looked at the empty chair reserved for Grandpa and said softly, "Grandpa would have loved to hear about my college applications." Brian put down his fork and looked at Emily with new eyes. Emily then asked my mother, "Grandma, why are some people in the family photos and others aren't?" The room fell silent. My mother opened her mouth but couldn't find the words. After dinner, at 11:30, I told Emily it was time to leave. We packed our things and as we walked down the stairs, Megan asked, "Where are you going?" I said, "Home." "Watch your email." We drove to the Airbnb cabin. At midnight, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the encrypted draft on my laptop. I placed my finger on the send button and took a deep breath. As I pressed it, I knew that everything was about to change. Within minutes, I received the first email from Megan. "Marcia, please," it said. The next few emails were more desperate. "What do you want?" "I'll do anything." But I didn't reply. A little later, I received an email from Brian. "Thank you for warning me. I won't forget this." I put the phone down and let out a single, sharp sob. It was a sob of relief and of victory. The next morning, Miss Jenkins arrived at the lake house with the certified copies of the notice. She informed my parents and Megan that all distributions to them were permanently revoked, and they had 30 days to vacate the lake house. A few hours later, Megan showed up at our door in Burlington, shivering in the snow. "Marcia, please reverse it." "I'll do anything," she pleaded. I looked at her. "You called my daughter a bastard in front of 50 people. She is your daughter, Megan. You gave her up a long time ago. Now, you don't get to take her back." She cried and begged, but I stood firm. Then my parents arrived, also begging me to change my decision. I told them, "You made your choice 17 years ago. Grandpa gave me a way to protect Emily, and I'm using it." As they drove away, I knew that the truth had finally won. Emily came downstairs and sat beside me. "Mom, I always knew you'd take care of me," she said. I put my arm around her. "Yes, sweetie, and I always will." A few months later, on Emily's 18th birthday, we went to Ms. Jenkins' office. She had a sealed envelope for Emily, written by Grandpa. "Dear Emily, by the time you read this, I will have been gone for many years. The truth is, you were born to Megan and raised by Marcia. Marcia chose to be your mother, and she saved you. I left a clause in the trust to protect you. You are a Thompson, and I'm proud of you." Emily read the letter, a single tear rolling down her cheek. She looked at me. "Mom, you'll always be my mom, no matter what." I hugged her tightly. "I know, sweetie, and I love you more than anything in this world." The lake house, which had been a source of so much secret and pain, would now be a place where Emily and I could create new, happy memories. And I knew that no matter what the future held, I had the strength to protect my daughter, just as my grandfather had protected us both.